Leave me alone!
Stop there! Please, let me go. I promise I didn't see anything.
The rain came down in sheets that night, turning the narrow Seoul alley into a river of neon reflections. Amara held her phone up, angling it to catch the glow of the nightclub sign behind her, her dark curls already plastered to her face. She was supposed to be back at the dormitory an hour ago, but the exchange student curfew felt suffocating tonight. Just one video. Just one moment of freedom before she returned to her carefully monitored life.
I'm
Hey guys,
exploring
I'm
the
exploring the
nightlife
nightlife district, and honestly, she grinned at the camera, her American accent cutting through the sound of distant music. Seoul after dark hits different. The energy here is. The gunshot cracked through the air like thunder. Amara's phone clattered against the wet pavement as she ducked instinctively, her heart exploding in her chest. Another shot, then another. She scrambled backward, her sneakers slipping on the slick ground, until her back hit the cold metal of a dumpster. Her breathing came in sharp, painful gasps as she pressed herself into the shadows, making herself as small as possible. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. But it was. Through the gap between the dumpster and the brick wall, she could see them now. 3 men in the mouth of the alley, their expensive suits soaked through. 2 held guns. The third was on his knees, pleading in rapid Korean that Amara's limited vocabulary couldn't quite grasp. But she understood the desperation in his voice. The terror. Then another figure emerged from the darkness, and Amara's breath caught in her throat. He moved like a predator, unhurried despite the rain, despite the violence hanging in the air. Even from this distance, she could see he was young, maybe early 20s, with sharp features and eyes that reflected the neon lights with an almost inhuman coldness. His black coat billowed slightly as he walked, and when he stopped in front of the kneeling man, there was something terrifyingly final about his posture. The pleading grew more frantic. The young man in the coat said something quietly, his voice too low for Amara to hear over the rain. Then he raised his gun with practiced ease and fired once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed off the alley walls, mixing with Amara's choked gasp as the body slumped forward into a puddle that quickly turned crimson. Her phone. She dropped her phone, and it was still recording. Amara's hand shot out before her brain could catch up, fingers scrabbling across the wet pavement until they found the device. The screen was cracked but still glowing, still filming. She could see herself in the preview, terror-stricken and shaking, and behind her in the frame, the killer turned his head. Their eyes met through the phone screen, and Amara felt her world tilt. He'd seen her. He'd seen the phone. For a moment that stretched into eternity, neither of them moved. Then his jaw tightened, and he said something sharp to his men. Will she escape, or will she fall for a murderer? Keep listening, T.O. Find out, Amara ran. She didn't think about direction or safety, or anything except the primal need to get away. Her feet pounded against the pavement as shouts erupted behind her. The alley twisted and turned, splitting into smaller passages that all looked the same in the rain and darkness. Her lungs burned. Her phone was clutched so tightly in her hand that her knuckles ached. She burst onto a main street, nearly colliding with a group of clubgoers who shouted after her in annoyed Korean. She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. But when she risked a glance over her shoulder, she saw them. 2 men in dark suits, moving through the crowd with terrifying efficiency, their eyes locked on her. No, 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 no. Amara veered into another alley, this one narrower, darker. A dead end. She spun around, trapped, as footsteps echoed closer. Her shaking hands fumbled with her phone, trying to delete the video, but the cracked screen wouldn't respond properly. The app kept freezing, showing her that terrible moment on loop. The gun raised, the body falling, those cold eyes turning toward her. The footsteps stopped. She looked up to find him standing at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the streetlights behind him. Up close, he was even more striking and more terrifying. There was no emotion on his face as he studied her, water dripping from his dark hair, his coat hanging open to reveal the holster at his side. Please, Amara whispered,
let
her
me
voice
go.
breaking. Please, I didn't see anything.
I promise I didn't
I'll
see
delete
anything.
It. I'll. He took a step forward, and her words died in her throat. Another step. The world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them, the rain, and the terrible certainty of what came next. I'm sorry, she heard herself say, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. For being there. For existing. For witnessing something she was never meant to see. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. Decision. He raised his hand, and Amara's vision went white with panic. This was it. This was how she died, alone in a Seoul alley, thousands of miles from home, all because she wanted to film a stupid video. But he didn't reach for his gun. He pulled out a phone instead, his gaze never leaving her face as he made a call. He spoke in Korean, his voice low and controlled, while Amara stood frozen against the wall, too terrified to run, too terrified to breathe. When he ended the call, he finally spoke to her in English, his accent precise but cold. "Come with me." "I can't, I have to my dorm." "Now." It wasn't a request. A black car pulled up at the end of the alley, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. One of the suited men from earlier opened the back door. The young man in the coat gestured toward it with a slight movement of his head. "If you run," he said quietly, "you won't make it 3 blocks. If you scream, no one will help you. If you fight, you will lose. Come with me and you live." It's a simple choice. Amara's legs felt like water as she stumbled forward. What else could she do? She climbed into the back seat, and he slid in beside her. The door closed with a final sounding click. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word, and Amara watched through the rain-streaked window as the city lights blurred together, carrying her away from everything familiar, everything safe. She became aware that she was still gripping her phone. With trembling fingers, she tried again to delete the video, but his hand shot out and caught her wrist. His grip was firm but not painful, and when she dared to look at him, his expression was unreadable. "Don't," he said simply. Then he took the phone from her hand, examined it briefly, and pocketed it. "We'll discuss this later." "Where are you taking me?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Somewhere you can't cause any more problems." "I won't tell anyone. I swear. I'll forget I ever saw." "You can't forget." He turned to look at her fully for the first time, and Amara felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. Memory is unreliable, but evidence is permanent. You filmed a murder. That makes you either a witness or an accomplice. Which would you prefer? "Neither. I didn't, I know what you were doing. Making your little video, playing tourist in a city you don't understand, in places you shouldn't be." His tone remained level, almost conversational, which somehow made it worse. Careless. Stupid. And now here we are. Tears burned at the corners of Amara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't cry in front of this man, this killer who spoke to her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. She turned back to the window, watching Seoul pass by in a watercolor blur, and tried to slow her racing heart. The drive lasted forever and no time at all. When the car finally stopped, they'd left the bright chaos of the city center for something quieter, more exclusive. The building they pulled up to was sleek and modern, all glass and steel and understated wealth. The driver opened Amara's door, and once again, she had no choice but to follow. The young man in the coat led her through a lobby that looked more like an art gallery, past a security desk where the guard bowed deeply and asked no questions, and into an elevator that required a keycard to operate. They rode up in silence. Amara counted floors, 23, 24, 25, until they reached the top. The penthouse was exactly what she'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Yes, it was luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her parents' house, and artwork that belonged in a museum. But it was also strangely empty, more like a showroom than a home. There were no personal touches, no photographs, no signs that anyone actually lived here. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather sofa. Amara sat. Her wet clothes were already leaving marks on the expensive upholstery, but he didn't seem to care. He shrugged off his coat, revealing a black shirt and shoulder holster, and walked to a bar cart near the window. He poured himself a drink, whiskey from the look of it, and stood there for a moment, his back to her, staring out at the city. When he finally turned around, his expression had shifted slightly. Not softer, exactly, but more focused, as if he'd come to some internal decision. "My name is Park Min-Jae," he said. "Do you know who I am?" Amara shook her head mutely. "Good. That simplifies things slightly." He took a sip of his drink. "The man you saw me kill tonight was named Young Taesung. He betrayed my family, sold information to our rivals, got 3 of our people killed last month, including a 19-year-old kid who'd been with us since he was 12. Min-Jae's voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered beneath the surface. "So I killed him. That's how this world works. I don't care about your world. I just want to go home. Amara whimpered. To America? To your exchange program dormitory. He raised an eyebrow. Unfortunately, that's no longer possible. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. What do you mean? I mean that you're a liability now. You witnessed a crime. You recorded it. Even if I trusted you to keep quiet, which I don't, there are others who won't take that chance. Jung had friends, allies who would love nothing more than to get their hands on proof that I killed him. Proof that could destroy my family. He set his glass down with a soft clink. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here tonight, where I can keep an eye on you while I figure out what to do with you. You can't just keep me prisoner. Can I? His tone was mild, almost curious. You're in my home, in a building with security that answers to me, in a city where you barely speak the language and have no one to turn to. Who exactly is going to stop me? The terrible truth of it settled over Amara like a weight. He was right. She was completely alone, completely powerless. Her parents thought she was safe in her dorm. Her roommate probably assumed she'd stayed out late with friends. No one would miss her until morning roll call, and by then, I won't hurt you, Min-Jae said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up at him. Not unless you give me a reason to. You'll have a room, food, everything you need. But you can't leave. Not yet. Do you understand? Amara nodded slowly, because what choice did she have? Good. He pulled out her phone, examined it again, then looked at her. What's your passcode? She told him, her voice hollow. She watched as he unlocked it, navigated to her videos, and watched the footage she'd captured. His expression didn't change as he saw himself on screen, saw the moment of the kill, saw his face turn toward the camera. When it finished, he didn't delete it. Instead, he pocketed the phone again. You have a good eye for composition, he said absurdly. The framing is quite cinematic. Amara didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the surreal comment. Can I at least tell my roommate I'm okay? She'll worry. No communication. Not until I decide what to do with you. He checked his watch, a sleek thing that probably cost more than her entire scholarship. It's late. I'll show you to your room. He led her down a hallway to a bedroom that was bigger than her entire dorm room had been. There was a massive bed with white linens, an ensuite bathroom, and more floor-to-ceiling windows with a view that would have taken her breath away under any other circumstances. Min-Jae opened the closet to reveal women's clothes in various sizes, all with the tags still on. These belong to, he paused, something complex crossing his face. They were my mother's. Find something that fits. There are towels in the bathroom. I'll have breakfast ready in the morning. Wait, Amara called as he turned to leave. What happens tomorrow? Min-Jae looked back at her, and in the soft light of the bedroom, he looked younger somehow, less like a killer and more like a tired college student. Tomorrow, I decide if you live or die. Get some sleep. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, and Amara heard the unmistakable sound of a lock engaging. She was alone. She stood there for a long moment, her wet clothes dripping onto the expensive hardwood floor, her mind struggling to process everything that had happened. An hour ago, she'd been filming a silly video. Now she was locked in a penthouse by a murderer who held her life in his hands. The absurdity of it, the sheer impossibility, finally broke through her shock, and Amara sank onto the edge of the bed and let herself cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that rolled down her face as the adrenaline drained away and left her hollow and exhausted. When she finally had no more tears left, she forced herself to stand. She peeled off her wet clothes and found a bathrobe in the closet. Silk, probably designer, definitely worth more than anything she'd ever owned. The bathroom was marble and chrome, with a shower that had about 30 different settings. She stood under the hot water until her skin turned pink, trying to wash away the night, the fear, the memory of those cold eyes watching her. The clothes in the closet were indeed various sizes, and after some searching, Amara found pajamas that fit reasonably well. She caught sight of herself in the mirror, a 17-year-old girl in a dead woman's clothes, trapped in a gilded cage, and wondered what her mother would say if she could see her now. Probably something about chickens coming home to roost, about the consequences of sneaking out and breaking rules. Amara climbed into the bed, expecting to lie awake all night, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. Her last conscious thought was of Min-Jae's face as he'd looked at her in the alley, that moment of calculation before he'd decided to let her live. At least for tonight. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. Amara woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover, illuminating the strange room in harsh detail. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came crashing back, and her stomach twisted with nausea. She found more clothes in the closet, designer jeans that fit perfectly, a soft sweater, even sneakers in her size. It was unsettling how prepared Min-Jae's mother's wardrobe was, as if she'd anticipated every possible need. Amara dressed quickly and tried the door. Still locked. She was considering whether to knock or just wait when she heard the click of the lock being disengaged from the outside. The door swung open to reveal Min-Jae, now dressed casually in jeans and a simple black t-shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked absurdly normal, like any college guy she might pass on campus, except for the cold assessment in his eyes as he studied her. "Breakfast," he said simply, then turned and walked away, clearly expecting her to follow. The kitchen was all sleek surfaces and professional-grade appliances. Min-Jae had set the table with what looked like an elaborate spread: rice, soup, grilled fish, various banchan dishes that reminded Amara painfully of the cafeteria at her school. Her stomach growled despite everything. "Sit," Min-Jae said, already serving himself. "You need to eat." "I'm not hungry. You're terrified, exhausted, and trying to be brave. Eat anyway. You'll need your strength for what comes next." Those ominous words made Amara's appetite disappear, but she sat anyway and picked up her chopsticks with shaking hands. They ate in tense silence for several minutes before Min-Jae finally spoke. "I've made a decision about your situation." Amara set down her chopsticks, her heart hammering. This was it. The moment he'd tell her what he'd decided during the night. Life or death, he'd said. Which had he chosen? "You can't go back to your dormitory," Min-Jae continued, his tone matter of fact. "Too risky. Your friends, your teachers. Anyone who knows you could be used as leverage or could accidentally reveal what you know. So we need a cover story." "A cover story?" she asked. "You're going to transfer to a different school. Private, exclusive, one where I have influence. You'll live here, under my supervision, where I can ensure you don't become a problem." Amara stared at him. "You're going to what? Keep me as a prisoner permanently?" "Not a prisoner. A ward." He sipped his coffee calmly. "Think of it as witness protection, except instead of the government keeping you safe, it's me. I don't want your protection. I want my life back." "Your old life is over," Min-Jae said, and there was something almost gentle in his voice, which somehow made it worse. "The moment you saw what you saw, it ended. I'm offering you a new one. It's better than the alternative." "Which is?" His eyes met hers, and the coldness in them sent a chill down her spine. "Do you really want me to answer that?" She didn't. They both knew she didn't. "So I'm just supposed to what, play house with you? Pretend everything's normal?" "You're supposed to stay alive," Min-Jae corrected. "And you're supposed to stay silent. In exchange, you get to continue your education, live comfortably, and eventually, if you prove trustworthy, maybe even go home to America. But that's years away. For now, this is your reality. This is insane. This is necessary." He stood, clearing his plate with practiced efficiency. "I've already made the arrangements. You start at your new school tomorrow. I'll be transferring there as well." Amara's head snapped up. "What? I'm 22, but I never finished my education. My father pulled me out of school when I was 16 to learn the family business." His mouth twisted slightly. "But now I've decided to complete my studies. Convenient, isn't it? I'll be in your year, able to keep an eye on you at all times. To everyone else, you're a new student from America, and I'm the son of a wealthy businessman who's finally decided to get his diploma. No one will question it. You're going to follow me around school like some kind of stalker?" "I'm going to ensure you don't do anything stupid," Min-Jae corrected. "Like trying to tell someone what you saw, or attempting to run away, or—" "I get it," Amara cut him off bitterly. "I'm trapped. You're protected," he said again, but she shook her head. "It's the same thing." Something flickered across Min-Jae's face, annoyance maybe, or something more complex. "You should be grateful. Most people who witness what you witnessed don't get a second chance. They get a bullet and a shallow grave. I'm giving you your life." "You're stealing my life," Amara shot back, surprised by her own anger cutting through the fear. "You killed someone, and somehow I'm the one being punished for it." "I killed a traitor who deserved to die," Min-Jae said, his voice hardening. "If he'd lived, he would have continued selling information that would get more of my people killed. Innocent people who were loyal and trustworthy and didn't deserve what he did to them. So yes, I executed him. And I'd do it again." The certainty in his voice, the complete lack of remorse, should have terrified Amara. It did terrify her. But there was something else there too, something in the way he'd said innocent people, that made her wonder what else she didn't know about this world she'd stumbled into. "Tell me something," she said quietly. "The man you killed, did he have a family?" "Yes. A wife and 2 children. And you don't feel anything about that? About making them? He made his choice when he betrayed us," Min-Jae interrupted. "He knew what would happen. His family will be compensated and protected, despite what he did. That's more mercy than he deserved." He moved to the sink, rinsing his dishes with the same controlled efficiency he seemed to apply to everything. "Spend today settling in. Tomorrow, we start your new life. I suggest you accept it quickly. Fighting will only make things harder." He left her alone in the kitchen then, disappearing down the hallway toward what she assumed was his office or bedroom. Amara sat there for a long time, staring at the half-eaten breakfast in front of her, trying to process the impossible situation she found herself in. She was trapped. Truly, completely trapped. And the man who'd trapped her seemed to think he was doing her a favor. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Amara explored the penthouse like a prisoner mapping her cell, finding that while she could move freely within the space, every exit was locked, every window sealed. The balcony door required a code she didn't have. The front door was the same. Even the elevator wouldn't work without Min-Jae's keycard. She found a library full of books in both Korean and English, a gym that looked professionally equipped, and a home office with multiple computer screens that she was afraid to touch. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and sterile. Like a hotel no one actually stayed in. In the late afternoon, Min-Jae emerged from wherever he'd been and found her curled up in the library, trying to lose herself in a book she couldn't concentrate on. "Come with me," he said. "We need to establish some ground rules." He led her to a sitting room she hadn't explored yet and gestured for her to take a seat. He remained standing, his posture relaxed but something tense in his shoulders that suggested this conversation mattered to him. "First rule," he began. "No communication with anyone from your old life. No calls, no texts, no emails, no social media. I've already sent a message to your program coordinator explaining that you've withdrawn due to a family emergency and returned to America. Your parents will receive a similar notification. They won't worry because they'll think you're safe." "But I'm not safe," Amara said. "I'm being held captive." "You're safer than you've ever been," Min-Jae countered. "Second rule, you do not, under any circumstances, tell anyone what you witnessed. Not your new classmates, not your teachers, not anyone. If I suspect you've broken this rule, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" His eyes met hers. "The kind I'd rather not discuss." "Third rule, you stay where I can see you. At school, at home, everywhere. If I tell you to go somewhere, you go. If I tell you to do something, you do it. Your survival depends on your obedience." Amara felt her hands curling into fists. "You want me to be your puppet. I want you to stay alive," Min-Jae said, and there was something almost frustrated in his voice now. "Do you understand what would happen if Jung's associates found out you have footage of me killing him? They would take you. They would torture you for that evidence. And when they had what they wanted, they wouldn't just kill you quickly like I would have. They'd make it last. They'd make it hurt. So yes, I want your obedience because your obedience keeps you breathing." The vivid picture he painted made Amara's blood run cold. She thought of the gunshots in the alley, the pleading she'd heard before Min-Jae had ended it. Was he exaggerating to scare her, or was this truly the world she'd accidentally glimpsed? Why not just kill me too? The question came out before she could stop it. Why go through all this trouble? Min-Jae was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it yet. "Because you're not Jung Tae-sung. You're not a traitor or a criminal. You're just a girl who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. You don't deserve to die for that." He moved to the window, his back to her. "My mother always said that power means nothing if you use it without discretion. That there's a difference between necessary violence and cruelty. Killing you would be the latter." It was the second time he'd mentioned his mother, both times with that same complex note in his voice. Amara found herself asking, "What happened to her?" "She died," Min-Jae said flatly. 3 years ago. Cancer. She was the only good person in my family, and she died while my father and uncles played their games of power. She never wanted this life for me." "Then why do you?" "Because I don't get to choose," he cut her off, turning back to face her. "None of us do. We're born into this world, and we play the roles we're given or we die. Those are the options." He moved toward the door, then paused. Dinner will be ready at 7. I'd appreciate it if you'd join me. It's been a long time since anyone shared a meal with me in this place. He left before Amara could respond, leaving her alone with more questions than answers. That night, she did join him for dinner. She told herself it was because she was hungry, not because there'd been something almost vulnerable in his voice when he'd asked. They ate in silence at first, but as the meal progressed, Amara found herself studying him. Without the rain and the darkness and the gun, Min-Jae looked different. Still handsome in that sharp, dangerous way, but younger somehow. The cold mask he wore would slip occasionally, revealing flickers of something more human underneath. When he thought she wasn't looking, his expression would go distant, almost sad. "Do you live here alone?" she found herself asking. "Yes. My father has his own estate. I prefer the separation." "That seems lonely," she said. "Lonely is safe," Min-Jae said. "Close relationships make you vulnerable. Give your enemies leverage." He met her eyes across the table. "I learned that lesson well. Is that why you never finished school before? Because it would have made you vulnerable. That, and because my father decided I was more useful learning how to run his empire than learning calculus and literature." A bitter smile touched his lips. "Not that it matters now. He's grooming my younger brother to take over anyway. I'm just the enforcer. The one who handles the problems no one else wants to touch. Like me. Like you," he agreed. Then, surprising her. "But you're not just a problem to be handled. Not anymore. What am I then?" Min-Jae considered the question seriously. "I'm not sure yet. We'll figure it out together, I suppose." It was such a strange thing to say, this murderer who'd locked her in his penthouse. And yet Amara found herself wanting to believe there was something genuine beneath it. She hated herself for it, but she couldn't help wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was more to Park Min-Jae than the cold-eyed killer from the alley. She would come to regret that moment of weakness. And she would also come to treasure it. Because everything that followed, the danger, the obsession, the impossible connection that would grow between them, all of it started right there, over a quiet dinner in an empty penthouse, with a captor and his captive beginning to see each other as something more than just their roles in a tragedy neither had chosen. The night soul changed both their lives forever had only just begun. The days began to blur together in a way that both comforted and unsettled Amara. Wake up in the penthouse. Breakfast with Min-Jae, often in silence but sometimes punctuated by surprising moments of conversation. School, where his presence beside her became as natural as breathing. Evenings back at the penthouse, where the space between them felt both vast and impossibly small. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Amara stopped trying to contact her old life. Not because Min-Jae forbade it, but because she realized he'd been right. The further she got from that girl who'd filmed a TikTok in the rain, the safer she became. Her parents had received the fabricated story about her early return to America due to homesickness, and Min-Jae had somehow arranged for fake social media posts that made it look like she was living with relatives in California. To everyone who'd known her before, Amara Kim from the exchange program had simply ceased to exist. In her place was someone new. Someone harder. Someone who walked through the halls of Yonsei International Academy with Park Min-Jae as her shadow, untouchable and isolated and strangely content with it. That should have worried her more than it did. It was a Thursday afternoon, during their free period, when things shifted again. Most students used the time to study in the library or socialize in the common areas, but Min-Jae had claimed a small music practice room on the 3rd floor as their space. Soundproof, private, with a piano that no one else seemed to use. Amara sat on the floor with her back against the wall, working through calculus problems that made her head hurt. Min-Jae occupied the piano bench, his laptop open as he handled what he vaguely termed as family business. They'd fallen into this routine over the past week, sharing space without needing to fill it with words, comfortable in a silence that would have been impossible when they'd first met. "Do you play?" Amara asked suddenly, nodding toward the piano. Min-Jae glanced up from his screen. "What?" "The piano. Do you play?" He hesitated, something unreadable crossing his face. "I used to. My mother insisted on lessons when I was young." "Will you play something now?" "Why?" he asked. Amara shrugged, setting aside her calculator. "Because I'm curious. Because we've been stuck together for 3 weeks, and I still barely know anything about you that doesn't involve guns or threats." "That's intentional." He shrugged. "I know. Play anyway." She insisted. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he closed his laptop with a soft click and turned to face the keys. His fingers hovered over them, and Amara saw the tension in his shoulders, like this was somehow more vulnerable than anything else he'd shared with her. When he finally began to play, the music that filled the small room was heartbreaking. It was Chopin, she thought, though she didn't know enough about classical music to be sure. Melancholic and beautiful, each note precise and controlled, but somehow full of emotion that Min-Jae never let show on his face. She watched his hands move across the keys, watched the way his eyes closed briefly, watched the mask slip away until she was seeing something raw and real. This was who Park Min-Jae had been before the violence, before the blood. This was the boy his mother had raised, who'd taken piano lessons and probably dreamed of a different life. The song ended too soon, the last notes fading into silence. Min-Jae's hands remained on the keys, unmoving, and when he finally looked at her, there was something almost scary in his eyes. "My mother's favorite piece," he said quietly. "She made me play it at her funeral. I haven't touched a piano since." Amara's throat tightened. "Why did you play it now?" "Because you asked." "Because," he stopped himself, jaw tightening. "I don't know." She stood and moved to sit beside him on the bench, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Thank you for sharing that with me." "It's just music," he replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "No, it's not." Amara turned to look at him, and found him already looking at her, his dark eyes intense in the afternoon light filtering through the practice room's small window. "It's a piece of who you were, who you could still be, maybe, if you let yourself." "That person is dead, Amara. He died a long time ago." "I don't believe that." Her voice was soft but certain. "I think he's just hiding, buried under all the things you've had to do, all the roles you've had to play. But he's still there." Min-Jae's hand lifted, and this time he didn't stop himself from touching her. His fingers traced the line of her jaw with unexpected gentleness, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "You see things that aren't there. You want to find good in people who don't deserve it. Maybe. Or maybe I just see what you won't let yourself see." She replied softly. They were too close now, close enough that Amara could count his eyelashes, could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, could feel his breath on her face. The air between them felt charged, dangerous, full of possibility and warning both. "We shouldn't," Min-Jae said, but he didn't move away. "Shouldn't what?" "This. Whatever this is becoming." His hand slid from her face to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her curls. "I'm your captor. Your jailer. Nothing good can come from." Amara closed the distance and kissed him. It was brief, barely a heartbeat of contact, but it sent electricity racing through her veins. She pulled back immediately, her own boldness shocking her, expecting anger or rejection or that cold mask to slam back into place. Instead, Min-Jae made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a surrender, and pulled her back in. This kiss was nothing like the first. "It's getting dangerous. Subscribe to see how far their love will go." It was desperate and consuming, weeks of tension finally finding release. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious and breakable, while his mouth claimed hers with barely restrained intensity. Amara's fingers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and when his tongue traced her lower lip, she gasped against his mouth. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary, both of them shaking, foreheads pressed together. "This is a mistake," Min-Jae whispered, but his hand stayed on her face, his thumb tracing her swollen lips. "Probably," she responded, still panting. "It complicates everything." "I know," she said again softly. "I could hurt you. I will hurt you. It's what I do." Amara opened her eyes and met his tortured gaze. "Then hurt me. But stop pretending you don't feel this too." Something broke in his expression, some final wall crumbling, and he kissed her again. Slower this time, deeper, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. "What are you doing to me?" he asked, the question barely audible. "Same thing you're doing to me," Amara admitted. "Turning my world upside down. Making me feel things I shouldn't feel. This is dangerous. For both of us," he said, his head still resting on her forehead. "Everything about our situation is dangerous." She pulled back enough to look at him properly. "At least this is a danger we're choosing."